The most powerful conversations in Britain for the last 3 years weren't happening in the cabinet room. They were happening on a server in Beijing. For over 1,000 days, the private mobile phones of the people closest to power, the senior aides to 3 different prime ministers, were compromised. Their texts, their calls, their every digital move. All of it was an open book. And the most chilling part? British intelligence had no idea. This isn't a spy movie. This is the reality that exploded into public view on January 26, 2026. A bombshell report from the Telegraph revealed that Chinese state-sponsored hackers had burrowed their way right into the heart of Downing Street. From 2021 all the way through 2024, a group known to intelligence agencies as Typhoon had unfettered access to the phones of key staff under Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and even Rishi Sunak. Think about what that means. Every frantic text during a political crisis, every sensitive discussion about national security, every late-night call planning election strategy. It may as well have been a conference call with a foreign intelligence agency. One source inside the investigation described it as a breach going right into the heart of Downing Street. They could allegedly read text messages and listen to phone calls at will. It was a complete, systemic, and terrifyingly invisible intrusion. But here's where the story gets even more unsettling. This massive security failure wasn't uncovered by MI5 or GCHQ, Britain's own world-class intelligence services. They were in the dark. The alarm was only raised in 2024, when American intelligence, tracking a much larger global operation, stumbled upon the infiltration. The US discovered that Typhoon had been worming its way into telecommunication systems around the world, and as they pulled on that thread, the line led straight to the front door of number 10 Downing Street. The UK was a victim, but it was also a blind spot. To really grasp the scale of this, we need to go back. The timeline of this hack reads like a highlight reel of modern British political chaos, and at every step, someone was listening. It begins in 2021, under Boris Johnson. The country was still grappling with the pandemic and the messy fallout of Brexit. Imagine the conversations happening on his aides' phones. Discussions about trade deals, vaccine rollouts, and the constant political fires that defined his premiership. Typhoon was there, a silent observer in their pockets. They weren't just stealing data. They were potentially gathering real-time intelligence on the mindset and strategy of the UK's leadership during a period of intense vulnerability. Then the attacks escalated. Through 2022 and into 2024, as the government churned through leaders from Johnson to Liz Truss and then to Rishi Sunak, the hackers intensified their efforts. Intelligence sources confirmed there weren't just 1 or 2 breaches. There were many separate incidents targeting the phones of government staff. This wasn't a smash and grab. It was a patient, persistent, and deeply embedded surveillance campaign. They were mapping the entire power structure of the UK government, one phone at a time. And all this time, a digital ghost was haunting the halls of power, and no one even knew to look for it. It wasn't until 2024, when US intelligence tipped them off, that British agencies finally confirmed the devastating truth. Their own backyard had been compromised for years. So the Americans found the breach. But how deep did the rabbit hole truly go? The answer reveals a spy operation so vast, it redefines our understanding of modern espionage. This wasn't just about a few aides in London. The group at the center of this sought Typhoon, isn't some rogue hacktivist collective. US and UK intelligence attributed to the Chinese state. And their target wasn't just Downing Street. Sought Typhoon was running a global campaign. They were hitting the UK's closest allies, the other members of the Five Eyes intelligence sharing alliance, the United States, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. This was a coordinated assault on the West's most sensitive intelligence network. But it's how they did it that is truly breathtaking. They didn't just spend their time trying to phish individual politicians one by one. That's too small. Instead, they went for the jugular, the telecommunications companies themselves. By compromising the core infrastructure of these global telecom giants, they gained a godlike level of access. Think of it this way. Instead of trying to pick the lock on your front door, they got a master key to the entire apartment building. By embedding themselves within the networks, they could potentially target almost anyone. One source described it as a global espionage operation that rivaled the most ambitious intelligence plays of the Cold War. They had the capability to intercept communications from millions of ordinary people, not just high-profile targets. Downing Street was just one jewel in a much larger crown they were trying to steal. The data of millions of ordinary citizens across multiple countries was suddenly at risk. This ability to listen in at will is disturbing enough. But what the Chinese state was allegedly building, just as this story was about to break, in the very heart of London, that takes this from a cyber thriller to something far more tangible and audacious. Just days before the Telegraph published its story, the UK government gave the green light to a hugely controversial project, a new Chinese super embassy at a site near the Tower of London. This isn't just any embassy. At 700,000 square feet, it's set to be the largest in Europe, a massive physical footprint for Beijing in the UK's capital. And wait until you hear where they decided to build it. The site sits just feet away from critical subterranean fiber optic cables. These aren't just any internet cables. They are the digital arteries of London, carrying immense volumes of sensitive government, financial, and commercial data. The very data that Sought Typhoon was stealing remotely. China was now positioning itself to potentially access physically. It gets weirder. Renderings of the embassy plans, which were publicly available, appeared to show a mysterious, large underground chamber built right next to these data conduits. A concrete bunker of sorts, with its purpose completely unexplained. Security experts immediately raised the alarm. Placing a massive embassy belonging to a state accused of unprecedented cyber espionage directly on top of your nation's data backbone is, to put it mildly, a questionable decision. The timing is just staggering. As British intelligence was quietly dealing with the fallout of the Typhoon hack, another arm of the government was approving a project that critics are calling a potential physical Trojan horse. Was this an unbelievable coincidence? A catastrophic blunder? Or was the UK government, desperate for post-Brexit trade deals, making a calculated risk, trading long-term security for short-term economic gain? The questions are as troubling as the facts. This brings us to the firestorm of controversy that has erupted since this news broke. The first and most obvious question is, how on earth was this allowed to happen for 3 years? How did the UK's multi-billion-pound intelligence apparatus miss an intrusion of this magnitude? In November 2025, just a couple of months before the story broke, MI5 did issue a warning to Parliament about Chinese espionage threats. But it was vague, lacking the specific, explosive details about the Downing Street compromise. Why was the information held back? Was it to avoid panicking the public, or to avoid derailing sensitive diplomatic relations? And those diplomatic relations are now at the center of the debate. The timing of the leak was incredibly awkward for Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who was preparing for a landmark visit to China, the first by a UK Prime Minister since 2018. The trip was meant to reset relations and boost trade. Instead, it's been completely overshadowed by accusations of state-sponsored hacking. Starmer is now caught in a political vice. Cancel the trip and look weak, or go ahead and look like you're appeasing a nation that has been spying on you for years. His critics are calling the trip, combined with the embassy approval, a dangerously soft stance. Then there's the mystery of the Prime Minister's own phones. The reports are clear that aides were the primary targets. There's no public confirmation that the personal devices of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, or Rishi Sunak were ever directly compromised. But in the world of espionage, does that even matter? When your most trusted advisors, the people you are in constant communication with, have their phones turned into listening devices, you are compromised by extension. Every PM is calling notification, every shared document, every strategy session discussed in a group chat could have been captured. The hackers didn't need to be in the room, they just needed to be in the pocket of someone who was. Of course, we should be fair. Some outlets have urged caution, pointing out that while intelligence sources are claiming this, hard public evidence is scarce. The Chinese government has, predictably, not commented. But the consensus among Western intelligence agencies is clear, and the details that have emerged from multiple, credible sources paint a deeply disturbing picture. The biggest unanswered question of all is, what was the damage? What information did they get? And more importantly, did they use it? Could intelligence gleaned from these hacks have influenced UK policy decisions, like the eventual ban on Huawei from the 5G network? Could it have given China an advantage in trade negotiations or diplomatic standoffs? We may never know the full extent of what was lost during those 3 years. The data is gone, and the consequences could be echoing through British policy for years to come. So here we are, a 3-year-long hack of the highest levels of British government, a global espionage web targeting the West's closest allies, and a controversial super embassy rising in London. This story reveals the brutal reality of 21st century power. The battlegrounds are no longer just fields. They are the fiber optic cables beneath our feet and the smartphones in our hands. The operation was reportedly active into 2025, which means the threat isn't over. The same vulnerabilities that exposed 3 previous governments could very well be a risk to the current one. Typhoon showed that even in the most secure buildings, the greatest vulnerability can be the device you carry with you everywhere you go. The conversations that shape nations are happening on insecure channels, and foreign powers are listening in. This story is a stark warning that in the new Cold War, the spies are already inside the gates. This story is far from over, and new details are emerging all the time. What do you think is the most shocking part of this whole affair? The length of the hack, the embassy twist, or the fact it was the US that discovered it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay on top of the stories that are shaping our world in ways you can't even imagine, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.